For those that don't know me, my name is Sui, and I'll be preaching this morning. Woo! Yeah! Okay, let's go to Exodus 13, verses 17 to 22. Okay, the Bible reads, "Then it came to pass, when Pharaoh had let the people go, that God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest perhaps the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by way of the wilderness of the Red Sea, and the children of Israel went up in orderly ranks out of the land of Egypt. Verse 19. Okay. And Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had placed the children of Israel under solemn oath, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here with you. Verse 20. So they took their journey from Succoth and camped in Etham at the edge of the wilderness. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so as to go by day and night. He did not take away the pillar of cloud by day or the pillar of fire by night from before the people." This morning, I want to talk to you about what I've entitled Abide. So, from this passage, actually, can you give me the Amplified? The same passage, Exodus 13. I'll read. They journeyed from Succoth, this is from verse 20. They journeyed from Succoth in Goshen, and camped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. 21. The presence of the Lord was going before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them along the way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light, so that they could travel by day and by night. He did not withdraw the pillar of cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from going before the people. So the background to this story is that Pharaoh had let the Israelites go after 400 years of slavery. God had sent Moses to deliver his people. And so they left Egypt and they came to the edge of the wilderness, right? So at the edge of the wilderness, God appears. His presence comes down to them, and it goes before them in form of a cloud, a pillar of cloud. And then that was during the day. And during the night, the same pillar was in form of a fire behind them, lighting their way. So, and it says that the pillar did not withdraw from them at any time. Not one time did this pillar withdraw, right? So during the day, the same pillar was a cloud. And if we read from the Amplified version, we read that the presence of the Lord was going before them in the pillar. So this cloud that was going before them contained the presence of God, meaning the presence of God went before them, right? Right at the edge of the wilderness, right at the edge of this place that's unknown. They've come out of slavery, and they are going to the promised land. But between the place of slavery and the promised land, there's a vast wilderness in between. And at the edge of the wilderness, God comes down in form of a cloud with his presence, and he goes before them so that he marks out the steps that they would take, so that when they're walking, there are footprints for them to step in, because God has already gone ahead of them, so that each footstep that they take forward has already been taken by God himself. So each place that they step, each footprint is no mistake. To the left or to the right. It is exactly where God wants them to go. Why? Because his presence has gone before them. So I want us to look at the attributes of God that we see through this cloud that led the Israelites through the wilderness. So number one, it guides and it gives light. So in Exodus 13:21, we just read, the presence of the Lord was going before them by day, right? To lead them along the way, right? But not only during the day, both day and night. Regardless of your situation, whether it's dark, whether it's bright, whether you're full, whether you're hungry, whether you have a job, whether you're unemployed, whatever your situation is, God is still leading the way. His presence is still there, day and night. It comes in different forms. During the day, it's a cloud of his presence. During the night, it's a fire that lights the way. During your time of being in a nice place, his presence is there. In the dark times, his light is there. He is constantly there to guide you and to lead you. Can I have Exodus 14:19-20? And the angel of God who went before the camp of Israel moved and went behind them. And the pillar of cloud went before them and stood behind them. So it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. Thus it was a cloud and darkness to the one, and it gave light by night to the other, so that the one did not come near the other all that night. So at this stage, the Egyptians, Pharaoh has realized that he made a mistake in letting the Israelites go, and he's decided to go after them, right? So the Egyptian army amasses and chases after the Israelites, and they've come to a standstill. And so we've read in verse 19, right? So this is what God does. The angel of God who has been leading the people. Remember the pillar with his presence leading them, right? So the angel of God who has been leading the people of Israel, what does he do now? He moves to the rear of the camp because the Egyptians are behind the Israelites, right? So God moves to the rear of the camp. And then what does he do? The pillar of cloud also moved from the front and stood behind them. So not only did the angel, but the cloud. Remember, the cloud was the presence of God? So the angel moved and the presence of God moved, right? So the cloud settled between the Egyptians and the Israelite camps. So what are we seeing here? The Egyptians are here. The Israelites are here. The angel moves from the front to the back. The cloud, which is God's presence, moves from the front to the back, standing in between the Egyptians and the Israelites. And it goes on to say, the cloud settled between the Egyptian and Israelite camps. As darkness fell, the cloud turned to fire, lighting up the night. But the Egyptians and Israelites did not approach each other all the night. So what happens is, this cloud turns to light. On the Israelite side, there's light. All the Egyptians are seeing is darkness, right? God provides light. He is a constant light to us. For those who are against us, the same light that he shines to us, they see darkness. The same God, different facets of God are seen, depending on which camp you're in. If you're in his camp, it's his light you see. If you're on the other side, you see the same thing, but you see darkness. And the separation between the two. That separation between the two is what? The presence of God. Can we go to Numbers chapter 9? Verse 15 to 22. I'll read. On the day the tabernacle was set up, the cloud covered it. But from evening until morning, the cloud over the tabernacle looked like a pillar of fire. This was the regular pattern. At night, the cloud that covered the tabernacle had the appearance of fire. Whenever the cloud lifted from over the sacred tent, the people of Israel would break camp and follow it. And wherever the cloud settled, the people of Israel would set up camp. In this way, they traveled and camped at the Lord's command, wherever he told them to go. Then they remained in their camp as long as the cloud stayed over the tabernacle. If the cloud remained over the tabernacle for a long time, the Israelites stayed and performed their duty to the Lord. Sometimes the cloud would stay over the tabernacle for only a few days, so the people would stay for only a few days as the Lord commanded. Then at the Lord's command, they would break camp and move on. Sometimes the cloud would stay only overnight and lift the next morning. But day or night, when the cloud lifted, the people broke camp and moved on. Whether the cloud stayed above the tabernacle for 2 days, a month, or a year, the people of Israel stayed in camp and did not move on. But as soon as it lifted, they broke camp and moved on. So what are we seeing here? The Israelites followed the cloud wherever it went. When it stopped, they stopped. When it moved, they moved. So, clouds are usually in the sky, right? So if I'm walking and I'm looking down, I can't see a cloud, right? I don't know that it's there. I mean, in my mind, I know there are clouds in the sky, right? But I can't see it. Why? Because my vision is down here. We've just seen that the Israelites followed the cloud. You can't follow something that you don't see, right? Right? So, in order for them to follow this cloud, it tells me they knew where that cloud was all the time. Because it says, when it moved, they moved. When it stopped, they stopped. So in order for me to know that the cloud has stopped, I need to look up and see that it stopped, right? In order for me to see that it's moved, I need to look up and see that it's moving, and then I get my things and get moving. So I have to be in alignment with God, right? I have to be in communication with God so that when he moves, I move. When he stops, I stop. How do I do that if I cannot see him? How do I do that if I do not know him? Right? Amos 3:3 says, "Can two walk together unless they are agreed?" Agreement implies conversation. Agreement implies a knowledge of the topic at hand, right? And both parties have to be aware of what that conversation is. And they agree. And that's how they walk together. So I just want to give you a few Bible verses that you can read at home. that just illustrate how God guided the Israelites by the cloud. Exodus 40, 34 to 38. Exodus 40, 34 to 38. Numbers 10, 11 to 12. Numbers 10, 34. So number one, we saw that the one attribute of God that we see in the cloud is that he guides and he gives life. Number two, he remains steadfast. We read in Exodus 13, 22. He did not withdraw the pillar of cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from going before the people. Can we read Exodus 40, 38? For the cloud of Jehovah was upon the tabernacle by day, and there was fire therein by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel, throughout all their journeys. Right? So God not only gives light and he guides, but that light is steadfast, continuous, never changes. That's the kind of God that we serve. Number three, he protects and fights for those that are for him. Exodus 14, 23. And the Egyptians pursued and went after them into the midst of the sea, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. The next verse. Now it came to pass in the morning watch that the Lord looked down upon the army of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and cloud, and he troubled the army of the Egyptians. Next. And he took off their chariot wheels, so that they drove them with difficulty. And the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fights for them." Fights for them against the Egyptians. So in this verse, we're seeing God fight for the Israelites. He caused confusion in the camp of the Egyptians. And they said, "Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fights for them." The Egyptians were able to recognize the Lord fighting for the Israelites, right? How? This is a God they didn't serve. So how did they recognize that the Lord is fighting for them, right? It was through the display of God's might, right? That's how they recognized that there's a God, there's got to be something that is fighting for these people. The Israelites, nowhere does it say the Israelites had an army. Nowhere does it say they had chariots. Nowhere does it say they had weapons. The Egyptians at that time had the greatest army, right? So you've got this mass of people that has an army, and you've got these people, women, children, old men, and men. No weapons, no army. And yet this mighty army sees and says, the Lord fights for them. That's the God that we serve. We serve a God that protects and fights for those that are for him. Number 4, he takes you to the higher place of revelation so that you operate from a place of glory. Exodus 24, 15 to 18. Then Moses went up into the mountain, and a cloud covered the mountain. The glory of the Lord rested on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And on the 7th day he called to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. The sight of the glory of the Lord was like a consuming fire on the top of the mountain in the eyes of Israel. So Moses went into the midst of the cloud and went up into the mountain. And Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. So what we see here is Moses goes up on the mountain, right? In the midst of the cloud. Remember, the cloud contains the presence of God, right? So if I paraphrase that, can I have Exodus 24:18? So if I paraphrase that with what we've established, that God's presence resides in the cloud, then it reads, so Moses went up into the midst of the presence of God and went up into the mountain. Moses had to go up. He had to leave behind all his daily problems. He had to leave behind the limitations that are here on this earth. And so he went up to a place where God's presence resides. And in that place, he spent 40 days and 40 nights. And what happened? He got revelation. That is the place that God spoke to him and gave him the commandments. It is when we go up, when we leave the limitations down here and go up into the presence, that we encounter God face to face, one-on-one. And it's in that place that we get revelation. God, I don't have a job. Go up into his presence. God, I don't know the next step to take. Go up. God, I'm tired. Go up. The answers are up in his presence. One with God, up in his presence. Revelations 11:12. And they heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, come up here. And they ascended to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies saw them. So God called them up. And the enemies were left behind, and they were able to see them in an elevated place. See, when you obey the voice of God, when he says come up, you're leaving your enemies down here, and they're able to see you go up into the presence of God. But the question is, can you hear him say to you, come up here? Number 5, you can see that the cloud is the meeting place between God and man. Exodus 33:7. Moses took his tent and pitched it outside the camp, far from camp, and he called it the tabernacle of meeting. And it came to pass that everyone who sought the Lord went out to the tabernacle of meeting, which was outside the camp. Next verse. So it was, whenever Moses went out to the tabernacle, that all the people rose, and each man stood at his tent door and watched Moses until he had gone into the tabernacle. And it came to pass, when Moses entered the tabernacle, that the pillar of cloud descended and stood at the door of the tabernacle, and the Lord talked with Moses. And all the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the tabernacle. And all the people rose and worshipped, each man in his tent door. So the Lord spoke to Moses face to face, as a man speaks to his friend. And he would return to camp, but his servant Joshua, the son of Nun, a young man, did not depart from the tabernacle. So, what's the tabernacle today? The church. We've just read that the tabernacle is the place of meeting. Today, we meet in church, right? And we've just read that the presence of God, when Moses walked into the tabernacle, or when he walked into the church, the cloud settled at the entrance of the tabernacle. When we come to our meeting place with God, when we come to church, his presence settles at the doorway. And it saturates the sanctuary. And it goes on to say that Moses talked face to face with God. We come into the tabernacle, and his presence is at the door, and it saturates the atmosphere. And we have the opportunity to come face to face with God. But not only that, remember the presence resides at the doorway, right? So those coming after us have to pass through the doorway. So they have to pass through the presence of God. And when we leave, we pass through the doorway, the presence of God, so that when we go out there in the world, we carry with us that presence. Right? Number 6, it distinguishes you from other people. Exodus 33:15. Then he said to him, "If your presence does not go with us, do not bring us up from here." Let's go on to 18. Can I have 16? Sorry. It reads, "Then Moses said, 'If you don't go personally with us,'" I'll start reading again from verse 15. Then Moses said to him, "If your presence does not go with us, do not bring us up from here." "For wherein now it shall be known that I have found favor in thy sight, I and thy people, is it not in that you go with us, so that we are separated, me and my people, from all the people that are upon the face of the earth?" Let me read it from the New Living Translation. "If you don't personally go with us, don't make us leave this place. How will anyone know that you look favorably on me and on your people, if you don't go with us? For your presence among us sets your people and me apart from all other people on the earth." So we saw in the beginning that the Egyptians were able to recognize that God was with the Israelites by the power that he displayed. And here Moses said, "God, like, if you don't go with us, don't make us go with us, because how will people know? Because we're separate. We're separate from these people, but how will they know if your presence doesn't go with us? When you go to work and you don't go with the presence of God, how will people know that you're different? Right? If you don't go out there and you display the presence of God, which you should carry with you at all times, how are you different? How are you different? How are you separate? Because what separates us is the presence of God. So then, how can we access these attributes that we've seen? John 15, 4-8. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, and you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, bears much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire, and it shall be done for you. By this is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit, so you will be my disciples. Abide in me, and I in you. That's how we access these attributes. The word abide, I'll just read what it means. It means to remain stable in something, to be in a fixed state. So what Jesus is saying is, remain in me. Remain in a fixed state in me, and I will do the same. Can I have verse 4 again up on the screen? So he's saying, remain fixed in me. Remain stable in me, and I in you. He is the branch, and we are the branches, he is the vine, and we are connected to the vine, right? But we cannot bear fruit without him, unless he abides, right? We have to abide. We have to reside. We have to stand firm. We have to remain fixed in order to produce fruit. The Father is glorified when we bear much fruit. How do we produce fruit? By abiding. Abiding also means to endure without yielding, to withstand. Ephesians 6:13. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. When we abide, we are able to withstand. But God, there's this onslaught all around me. There are all these waves all around me, God. God, I'm drowning. Abide, and you will withstand. To abide means to wait for. Psalms 27:14. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. To abide means to wait on him, and in that waiting, we are strengthened in our hearts. When you abide, you find rest in him, because his presence goes before you. We read in Exodus 33, verse 14, that the presence of the Lord went before the Israelites. He says, my presence will go before you, and I'll give you rest. Abiding in him, in his presence, gives you rest. God, I'm weary. Abide. God, I'm tired. Abide. You will find rest. The word rest here is from the Greek word that means you will find a place of settlement. So let me reread that. Can I have that back on the screen, please? My presence will go with you, and I'll give you a place of settlement. When we abide, his presence goes before us, and we come to a place of settlement in our lives. What does that mean? There's no sickness in my body. My children are well. My family is well. I have a job. I have a career. I can pay my bills. I've got food on my table. God settles me. I am in place in every area of my life. Nothing is out of place when I abide. When you abide in him, you know him. Ephesians 1, 18 to 19. The eyes of your understanding being enlightened, that you may know what is the hope of his calling, and what are the riches of the glory of his inheritance in the saints, and what is the exceeding greatness of his power to us who believe, according to the working of his mighty power. So this is Paul praying for the Ephesians, that the eyes of their understanding may be enlightened. When we abide in God, he opens up our eyes, the eyes of our understanding, not our physical eyes, our spiritual eyes. Why? So that we know him and the power of his might. So then, my question to you is, where are you abiding today? For me, abide implies a place where you live, right? Where are you living today? The place you live is the place you draw from. So where are you living and drawing from? Is it in the midst of your problems? Are you so consumed by what's going on around you that that's where you're living? That's where you're drawing from? That is what you're seeing through? Is that your lens? Or have you come up high and left that place and gone into his presence, so that now you're living from, drawing from his presence from a different realm? See, when we draw from the realm of God where we abide, it doesn't matter what's going on around you. Remember all the attributes we've just read, right? Do those change because your circumstances are not what you want them to be? Is God's word true? So then why are we not seeing these things in our lives? Where are you living? Where are you abiding? Can you tell where the cloud is right now? If he got up and moved, would you move? Do you know where he is? Do you know if he's stopped or if he's moving? Some of us do. But the problem is, in this season, God moved, right? So we moved with him. But we got so used to moving with him, we took our eyes off of him and we said, God, I got this. This is familiar. So I know we walk this way, so I'll keep walking this way. But when you look up, you see the cloud's no longer there. It's moved. Sometimes we get full of ourselves. Sometimes we know it, we think we know it all. God, I got you. We've been moving this way for so long, I got you. I know where you're going. You don't need to tell me. So you keep going, and you run into the wall. And then you go back to God. God, you told me to go this way, and I ran into the wall. Did you look up? I stopped and turned around a long time ago. You weren't looking where you were going. You thought you knew where I'll take you. And so you became God and started leading yourself. So then where are you abiding from? Where are you getting direction from? What are you looking up to say, today I move, tomorrow I stop? What is dictating those steps in your life? Is it God? Is it your job? Is it your boss? Is it the fact that you don't have money? Are those the things that have taken the place of God in your life leading you? What do you base your decisions on? Or should I say, who do you base your decisions on? I'm going to take this job. Did the presence of God go there for you to take that job? Did he lead you there? Did you even check to see where his presence was going? No, I think these will be my friends. I like them. Is it about liking? See, I think we play around with the kingdom of God. We play around with the kingdom of God. When the cloud moved, they moved. When it stopped, they stopped. Where is the cloud in your life? Where is the cloud in your life? Pastor, pray for me, please. Have you sought God yourself? See, it says that all the Israelites were, it doesn't say Moses was the only one able to see the cloud and so they moved. It says the Israelites saw the cloud and they moved. So you, where you're positioned, are able to see the cloud. It's not always pastor. You are able, where you are, to see the cloud and move. How? Abide in him. Abide in him. When you abide in me, I abide in you. That's what Jesus said. And you will bear much fruit. In this is the Father glorified, that you bear much fruit. So I'll leave you with this. Abide in him. Okay. Can I have Deacon Muiza to come in?